Hey, good people, it's your guy Lewis to the T. I'm back with your 13th installment of Black History Month 2021. Today is Saturday, February 13th, and on today we're going to have a discussion piece about the 13th Amendment and how that kind of translates a little bit into what's going on in today's world. So, looking back in time, 1864, the 13th Amendment was presented to Congress in order to abolish slavery. That happened in April of 1864. By January of 1865, that amendment had been passed by the Senate, and in December of 1865, that was ratified to include all states, including Delaware and Kentucky, who were still holdouts in regard to abolishing slavery. So the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution states that slavery and involuntary servitude have been abolished, except as punishment for individuals who have been convicted of a crime. So at this point in 1865, slavery and involuntary servitude itself was abolished, but could be used as punishment. That is a very important and pivotal moment in African American history because it technically put in place legality or a legal stance that says we are now free human beings in the land of the United States. It was so important that the 13th Amendment would come to pass because the Emancipation Proclamation, which was declared in 1863, was viewed by many to only be a directive of war. So because the Civil War was happening at the time, it was viewed that maybe states would come out of the war and say that, hey, the Emancipation Proclamation only pertained to slaves in Confederate states during war times. Now that the war is over, we can go back to business as usual. Because President Lincoln and some of his administration thought that this could be a problem, they introduced the 13th Amendment, which of course ended up being passed and ended up being ratified. When I think about that history and the significance of it, I really have to think about why it was necessary. So beyond the fact that the Emancipation Proclamation wasn't enough, one of the reasons that the 13th Amendment was necessary is because states really were refusing to release their slaves, were refusing to go along with the practice that men would be made free and eventually made equal. Much of this had to do with economics. The primary reason of this was economics. It was about economics, it was about power, it was about control. The reason I draw a correlation between what happened in 1865 with the 13th Amendment and the impeachment trial of Donald Trump is because the power, money, and control still exists today when it comes to our government. Unfortunately, the vote today did not choose to impeach Donald Trump. It was a vote of 57 to 43, and even though the majority won the vote, you need a 2/3 vote in the Senate in order to convict of impeachment. Because they did not have that 2/3 majority, even though they had more votes, he still was declared that he was not impeached a second time, which is also significant. We'll have to talk about that at another time. But when I thought about that, I thought about the senators who sat there. I thought about the senators who listened to the evidence that was presented. They watched the videos, they heard his words. Not that they needed to replay all of that because they actually lived it. And I thought to myself, what would grant a person moral confidence or moral peace to not convict a person who had incited an insurrection that could have potentially taken their lives? And when you really think about the way that our government is set up, it really is about the constituency. Many of the Republican senators who decided to stand on the side of Donald Trump, to stand on the side of turning a blind eye to the incitement of this insurrection, they had to be thinking about the money that's donated to their campaigns, they had to be thinking about the power that comes by their position in the Senate, and they had to be thinking about the control that comes from having constituents who sit them up on a pedestal and say, you speak for me. Not to say that these individuals are wrong because they were elected by a constituency that tells them what they would like to see them do. Some of these senators do govern people or represent people who believe truly as they believe, but also they have a duty to follow the law. Even though impeachment is not like a regular court case, it's more of a political trial than it is a criminal trial, there are still elements of the law that have to be followed. They take an oath of impartiality, saying that they would not be biased, that they would listen to all the evidence. Yet, as we watch on television and we read in print, 3 senators from the Republican side of this particular impeachment met with lawyers for the defense. So individuals that were defending the former president of the United States met with sitting senators who were acting as jurors, impartial jurors set to sit and to listen to evidence to make a decision. They were literally assisting them and helping them. Their act was not illegal under the Constitution. It was not illegal under the bylaws, but it was absolutely unethical. So that's the conclusion, or not the conclusion, but that's the correlation I wanted to draw between the impeachment trial and the 13th Amendment. I want to talk about the 13th Amendment as a historical footnote, the significance and the relevance to who we are as African American people, but I also want to draw that correlation to show the supremacist mindset that still exists today. We have to work together to make sure we eradicate that type of thinking. That is not something that just impacts or affects African American people. That is something that we as a nation have to come to grips with. That is important, that all of us as human beings, as people who live our daily lives side by side, we have to decide going forward that right is right and wrong is wrong, and it shouldn't be right versus left, it should be right versus wrong. So this is your guy, Lewis to the T. I hope you'll share your thoughts with me. Drop a note in the comments section. You'll be watching this on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and I hope to hear from you guys, and I'll see you again soon. Talk to you tomorrow.